Hello and welcome to this RedMonk conversation. My name is Kate Holterhoff. I'm a senior analyst at RedMonk, and today I have Mike Hartington, developer advocate at Prisma, with me. He is alumni of NX and Ionic. And Mike, I am so hype to have you here to talk mobile development with me.
Yes. I'm I have been like in the mobile space for like so long. It's just like the thing I am like probably most known for. And I got the battle scars to prove that I have been there since almost the very beginning. At least
That's
very
wild.
early on.
That's wild. I had multiple folks tell me I should talk to you when I started realizing that even though I thought I understood mobile development, I actually didn't. I was laboring under the illusion of competence like usual and realized my own sort of deficiencies here. Because I think as a front-end engineer, many of us are like, yeah, we're mobile front end. Like these things can be kind of smooshed together. And in a sense, maybe they are, like in a labor sort of way. A lot of teams kind of do that. But when I was talking to one engineer, he even mentioned that like there's one person at his organization who understands mobile, and everybody else just throws the mobile questions to this person. And this person is like, if they leave, they're in big trouble because there's like one person who really gets mobile. And there's all kinds of like weird knowledge that goes into this. Like it's mysterious. So I'm excited to have you here, Mike, to pull back the veil. Let's go into your background first. So why are you the person to talk to about mobile stuff? What have you seen in the past?
I mean, I would say I am a person to talk to. There's probably like you said, there's more people out there who have like this knowledge just at their core. But my experience was I was a pretty early adopter of some mobile tech at like many jobs ago. We were building cool like trade show kind of portfolios that we wanted to bring out instead of bringing like paper. Our CEO at the time brought out an iPad, and that was like the hot new fancy thing. And so I built a bunch of stuff to like make a mobile app, which at the time was kind of not a thing people did. And this was like 2012.
Oh, wow.
Right around
Yeah.
then. So yeah, so it's been a while. And ever since then, I just have been in the mobile space, kind of keeping tabs on like what are the new features coming out in each like iOS and Android, what are the new tools and frameworks that can be used to back to your example, like to simplify it so more people have more accessibility to develop a mobile app. The cross-platform story I think is probably the thing I'm most known for, and just kind of I have been in that space for so long. It's a part of me. It's like cool. It's kind of part of my identity, for better or for worse.
Yeah. Okay. And so for folks who aren't familiar, what is Ionic? Like what did you do there, and like what is their product?
Yeah, so Ionic was started off as a UI framework for mobile apps, for cross-platform mobile apps. The idea was that you could build a mobile app using web technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And there was this existing tool out there called PhoneGap or Cordova. It's kind of like one's the open source, one's the commercial. We like that idea, but we've said the only downside is all the apps look like garbage that are coming out of this, making people think like, oh, no real app could be built with this stuff because look at the apps that are out there. We built a framework and this collection of UI components that would enhance the bare bones apps that people were building. You would use our like scrolling containers, our buttons. We'd give you animations. We basically would sit down, record stuff on mobile devices. Like, how long does an animation last? How long does all this does this interaction last inside of an app? We would nerd out about those details, re-implement them for the web, and then have that be like an open source project anyone could adopt into their code base if they want to go down that road.
Because now there are a few ways to do this. Like Ionic was sort of an early entrant into this. And And there's also these sort of buzzwordy things. And I'm hoping we can do some definitions as we go. Okay, so you got the multi-platform and you've got hybrid platforms. And Ionic, which one was it? Did they fit into that terminology? They're a framework, so...
They were a framework, and... Okay, so here's the thing about that term, about like multi-platform hybrid framework. It's kind of like two sides of the same coin, if you ask me. The thing that we kind of approached it was we were a web-first approach to building a native mobile app. At the end of the day, yes, there were web assets in there, but there was still native code for each platform that sat along with it. So if we were to think of it as a spectrum, like one would be full web, one would be full native, we kind of sat like halfway in between where we had equal parts web and native code. Now, there are other platform and other tools out there that are further along towards the native spectrum. And then there's like pure web development where you're just doing your typical front-end engineering and not even considering like a native mobile app.
And so I had historically thought of like PWAs or just web apps as being these things that were, we always did like mobile first when we were creating front-end designs. And so, I was like, well, yeah, I'm a mobile developer. But no. In fact, it's all about the hardware, right? It's all about you got to learn some Flutter, right? And I feel like this is top of mind now because there's a lot of these frameworks coming out. So not, all the air in the room seems to be taking up with Expo. They've got their EAS thing, great. And then React Native was sort of the default, especially if you want to try to get some React developers. And then as you mentioned, we got some Cordova in there, which is like, I don't know, do you want to call it legacy? Is that cruel? I don't know. But like Cordova's been around for a while. But did you hear about Kotlin multi-platform, right? KMP.
Yes.
Yes. So now I believe this is this year, right? So now there's even sort of more folks that are playing it here. So I feel like there's this momentum behind it. I don't know. So yeah. So you're a little two sides of the same coin. We're still getting some native in there.
Yeah. I think
know.
with the Kotlin multi-platform, like the fun thing, there's also a Swift UI version for this where there's like they're trying to do Swift in Android now.
Oh goodness.
There's like this very interesting kind of goal that everyone was eventually going to get to where you have this collection of developers who know a particular skill set. This could be Java developers or Kotlin developers. This could be Objective-C, Swift developers, and they all want to just ship something to their users. It could be shipping an iOS app. Okay, now how do I get this app to my Android users without going out and having to spend extra engineering effort into re-implementing everything, hiring people? It's time, money. It's just a very slow and expensive process. How can I reduce that whole entire timeline so that way I can just take an app? I already have the core technologies. I just want to ship it out there. And so Kotlin multi-platform is like the very obvious thing that, cool, Kotlin has a very nice abstraction around building an app. Let's figure out how can we get Kotlin onto iOS? How can we get Swift and Swift UI onto Android? So everyone's trying to go to the same goal.
Right. Okay. So we're all funneling ourselves towards having mobile. And so this is where I was like trying to figure out these gaps in my own ways of thinking about this problem. So, and let me explain what I mean there. So you think of like having one code base. And I know you worked at NX, so mono repos, I guess we could bring this in here if we must. So I was like, oh, well, great. Then you have like your React Native code and it can run on the web, on my desktop. And it can also run on all these mobile devices. But in fact, you actually have to use like special frameworks to do this. So a lot of companies actually have two front-end repos instead of just the one that I feel like was advertised. Like I hear React Native, I'm like, oh yeah, one code base, that's all you have to change. But no. Okay. Are we going to get to this place? Because it sounds like there's a few little experimental things that can do this, but like I get the impression that this is not widely adopted. Like there are multiple. So I'm thinking of like Nicholas Gallagher's React Native Web. Right, as like a way to bridge this. But in general, what I'm hearing on Hacker News and on Reddit is that you have the 2 front end code bases. So, anyways, are we going to get to 1? Is that even desirable?
I'd argue it's desirable until it isn't. It's like every answer is like it depends, because like if you
Yeah, sure.
have like iOS and Android are uniquely different platforms, and the web is a uniquely different platform. So having everything just look like a cookie cutter version of your app on all these platforms, it kind of misses out on the nuances and uh the specifics of each of those platforms that you would want to take advantage of. Like, it makes sense to want to get as close as you can to that goal, but there's still going to be some parts where that project might have, um, okay, this is where we fork out for iOS, for Android, for the web, just because of this one very specific reason.
Huh.
But you could still have it. It still exists in a code base, and then you just
Right.
share that special like access to that part for certain teams.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it depends. Fine, I guess.
It's like the
Okay.
very safe answer that no one ever loves and no one likes to get, but it's truth. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
a weird place to be
Okay.
working in.
Well, are monorepos the solution to this problem at all? Is that I've heard that. I mean, I've heard presentations at DevNexus that actually pointed to there being ways to leverage a monorepo in order to have this parity and avoid extra work.
Yeah, I think a monorepo is like a smart way to do this. I know during my time at NX, I built a Java backend, a React front end, and then a Java Kotlin Android app. That everything could just be consuming the same endpoint. And I'm sure if I had like put in the extra effort, I could start playing around with like, here's my front end slash web, and then here's my front end slash iOS and my front end slash Android, and I have everything compartmentalized into these very unique uh, directories and parts of my monorepo, and it just makes managing and development much simpler.
All right.
There's a trade-off though, because now you're taking on the ownership of how do I take all these separate pieces and assemble them to make sense.
Right. So you're just trading off complexity. Well, I did find that illuminating because it does feel like a lot of these, at least the marketing terminology around, these multi-platform and hybrid is that there is going to be just one code base to rule them all. And I get the impression that that's just not the case. And frankly, I talked to some more grumpy developers who said no enterprise, I guess, custom or whatever you even use, like React Native, they would all have different code bases that you would only want to use like Flutter or something for your mobile experience rather than your backend and your actual, desktop experience. I mean, what do you say? Respond to that. What do you think? Is that not true?
I mean, one of the biggest companies in the world uses React Native all the time.
Sure.
Microsoft is they are contributors to React Native for a reason. They use
Yeah.
it for a lot of their a lot of their products are just React Native by default
Mm-hmm.
because they have the velocity already baked in. Their teams are already up and running with it. They know what they're doing and they know that it makes sense for them. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone who's like any absolutist approach of this would never fly in this environment, it's already there. It's even if it's not like obvious, it doesn't matter. It's still there.
So it's already happening. And so if I meet one of these, I wouldn't say anti-React Native, but just like React Native doesn't belong in standing up a serious app, right? I can point them to folks who've done it, but is there like a technical thing I can point to as well as like was there a moment in recent history where it became viable in ways that it hadn't been in the past?
Probably say like React Native had their moment where Microsoft shipped a React Native bridge for building Windows apps, and then Microsoft also shipped several Windows like starter apps as React Native apps instead of like pure native whatever code base is used for
Yeah,
Windows itself. They ship like part of those apps as React Native apps, and it's like
that was it.
Microsoft can do it.
Yeah.
There's kind of no
Okay.
reason not to like hold off on it. I mean, there are some
Okay.
reasons to hold off, but the Microsoft is like a leader where you can say, hey, technically this shipped and it's great and people don't care.
Yeah.
You should reevaluate your opinion.
Yeah. I wonder if it's that a lot of times these architectural decisions get made by folks in the back end, and maybe they're not having the right folks at the table to push back and say, no, actually, the React Native is, it can scale, it can do all the things that we want, and maybe they're just not being listened to. Because yeah, like I said, it tended to be folks that mobile is not their specialty. And like I have found on my own is I feel like the mobile developers, there aren't like huge thought leaders in the mobile development space. There's vendors,
Mm-hmm.
but I have had a hard time trying to find like who to follow to keep up on the latest and greatest in mobile. I mean, I don't know. Can you help me with that, Mike? Like, how do you keep up on what's going on in mobile?
So I've gotten a pretty good group of people that I follow. So for like the pure native side of the house, there's a gentleman from Firebase, Peter Friez. He
Okay.
works at the Firebase team, but he's also been like a big Swift and native um, mobile like Apple ecosystem kind of advocate for a while, and so like he has a whole uh series on how do you build something in Swift and keep up to date with the Swift UI changes and all everything going on in Swift mobile. I check
Okay.
out his stuff and I follow him on Blue Sky.
Great.
React Native, there's um, Brent Vante, who works at Expo. I've gotten to meet him a few times, and he is always sharing the cool things that they're doing in that space.
Yeah.
Um, Android is a little bit of a different one. I just kind of watched the Google I/O keynotes, and
Yeah.
hopefully, I'm at least familiar enough with what's going on in there to be like, oh, that's cool. I guess I gotta go
Okay.
talk to a few people and see what's the big deal about this.
Okay. And I'm glad you brought up Firebase because they were definitely on my list of things that we need to chat about.
Yes.
The reason for that is, I mean, at a high level, um, who is making money on mobile, right? I've had the conversation with folks like Alex Russell about the App Store and Apple's policies and that, and then I feel like that's almost like a separate conversation. I think what I'm interested in is like if when I either buy or just download an app, it's basically a zip file.
Hmm.
Um, then like it doesn't seem like it would be hosting, like that mobile developers are making money through hosting. It seems like it's something like advertising or like when you purchase something, like that's where folks are making money. So, and when I look into this, it just seems like Firebase is the default here, but then I suspect it's going to be like hosting providers, the hyperscalers, whoever, that's who is making the money because they have the servers, right?
Hmm.
So I guess my question to you is like, is there some sort of market that I'm missing here?
I mean, my experience actually shipping apps to the App Store and making money is almost non-existent. So I never went into it trying to make money. I had a stable job.
Yeah,
Most people, yeah, it's a lot of it is ad driven.
ad driven.
I think like back when I was at Ionic, one of the most common requests and common pieces of like tutorial information people requested was like, how can I implement ads in my app? Because I want to make money somehow.
Yeah,
And especially if you're trying to deploy to iOS and you have to pay the $100 Apple fee for your certificate,
yeah.
it's not cheap.
Mm-mm.
Um, and not to mention the hardware. So yeah, ads tend to be the biggest thing that people use. And that's like a revenue split because you try to get some, and
Uh-huh.
then you have to also pay the piper and pay the people who provide the ads, and there's that revenue split. And if you have in-app purchases, there's a revenue split for reasons. Um, uh, yeah, the real people who make the money are the ones doing the actual hosting for like you have assets that you're downloading or storing. you're gonna have to pay a file storing. So your AWSs will definitely collect some money from there.
Hmm.
It's just the kind of nature, like the success margin for apps that get published and become these billion-dollar companies, or these success stories that you hear about, like, well, you kind of used to hear about more often very early on in mobile. Those don't happen too much anymore. And
Yeah.
how people sustain mobile app development is kind of a uh, it's kind of one of those things I never got a good answer for.
Interesting. Okay. Well, clearly I'm with you. I am too. Well, let's shift it slightly and talk about dev tools around mobile development. So,
Hmm.
I'm, I talk with folks who do um, sort of observability around mobile development. Some of them in like the OTel community, open telemetry. Um, but it seems like there should be more. And so, I guess a way of framing this question for you would be, um, who would you say is the Vercel of mobile development?
Well, that's a good one.
Isn't it?
It
Isn't
is, because
it
there
a good
really
question?
isn't somebody out there that is doing the things that Vercel does at that scale.
Yeah.
Um, it is a very weird place. Like, Sentry was like a big player in there for a bit, because they had like the best like kind of SDKs for error reporting, but there was no like larger place that you go to, and that's kind of the downfall of like mobile as like a platform, is that you are piecing all these things together,
Yeah.
and duct tape and hoping that things really work and communicate
Yeah.
together. And okay, I got to do some like I got to send this off to one service to then massage it to go into this other service, and then hopefully things work out just fine.
Right. Right. Yeah. So duct tape and baling wire right now. So it does seem like there's an opportunity there. And I have heard that Expo is kind of filling that gap. It seems to me that maybe Firebase is too. But it seems to come down to the CI/CD pipeline, that just the deploying part of these mobile apps is the challenge.
Hmm.
And until the App Store situation is, I don't know what, like evolves, I guess, in the sense of like not having to like, wait for, approval and like pay this money and whatever. That we won't have a real easy deployment, one click Heroku style, beautiful deployment experience, right? That this just, it isn't possible in the current setup, which is too bad, right? I mean, that we've got this gatekeeping around devices that are in our pockets, right? I mean, it's just a computer. So I don't know. Okay. I didn't want to lead you though by bringing up the CI/CD thing, because would you agree that that's the hard part?
It is the hard part, because
Okay.
everyone would get to the point of like, I have this app, I'm testing it locally. Now what?
Yeah.
It was so hard that like even at Ionic, we built a whole commercial like leg of the company to
Oh,
solve
wow.
that problem, and to get deployments simplified to the fact where it's like you push to Git, we trigger a build and like give you an APK or that package format, and then you can test it, deploy it, or upload it to whatever store. And that was something that like everybody in our ecosystem was like thrilled to have. I know Expo has their EAS, which is
Yep.
a huge win for the React Native folks, because it's just as hard with React Native and than it would have been with Ionic, of like, how do I actually take my thing and ship it out to people?
Yeah.
Um, Native Android, native iOS, it's all just a challenge. And I think that's kind of I think they kind of intentionally keep it that way. This is me kind of,
Ooh.
tinfoil hat moment.
Ooh.
Like,
Go on. I'm here for it.
there was for a small period of time, and by small period of time, I think like maybe 2 or 3 days, where Apple put out like this Apple's App Store standards kind of paper, or web page, and there was some verbiage in there that was like, this is an amateur hour, this is the pros only. And it was very much a, don't come to the App Store if you're not a professional who's ready to do the work.
Mm.
They removed that language and kind of reverted back to a more friendly, open, kind of explanation. But it never really settled in my mind that they were willing to make the store and that whole shipping experience better. It just kind of like, you can take the words back and remove them from the site, but the sentiment is still there. And the lived experience of having to ship an app through your platform is that it is intentionally high, probably to reduce people who would ship less than ideal apps. But it seems very unfair, especially as someone who has no control of that.
Yeah. Whoa. And
Tinfoil
and
hat
so
off.
yeah, no. Like keep it to the side. Don't throw it away. Have you had that experience with Android? Like, is there just this like huge philosophy difference between these two sort of predominant app stores?
Android is a little bit easier to deploy to, mostly because the hardware requirements that you have. If you wanted to ship something to iOS, you needed a Mac. If you wanted to ship something to Android or to the Google Play Store, you didn't need a specific piece of hardware. You could do Windows, Mac, Linux. Um, Now, the counterpoint to it is that anyone could ship an app to Google Play, and
Mm-hmm.
Google Play does not have the reputation for having um, stellar quality apps.
Okay.
So there is kind of a Apple does have a good reason for why they maintain such high quality and excellence, and they have a
Okay.
review process. Google Play, it's a little bit more lenient, but you get some stuff that could be sketchy or just questionable at best.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Is it also less expensive to deploy on the to Android?
Significantly. I think the fee was like
Oh,
$20 back in the day. I remember paying
wow.
$20 for an Android development license, like Google Play publishing license or whatever it was. Um, it might have gone up, but it was,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, I could justify that as like, oh, I guess I just won't go out to lunch one day.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that's fine. We can talk historically. Folks can check up, and frankly, I'm sure it's one of those things that changes frequently. So, yeah. But in your experience, historically cheaper. Um, okay. So it seems like there is. We talked about how things are moving. We talked about the Kotlin, platform. So I'm interested in some of these new open source products. So of course we've got Expo. We've talked about them a little bit, but we've also got now Snapchat's Valdi and
Yeah.
ByteDance's Links. Have
hmm
you messed around with those at all?
I honestly, I just saw the Snapchat one,
Oh yeah.
and
Well, it just came out. That makes
yeah,
sense.
I looked at it and I was like, it definitely seems like it came out of their use from React Native. It's a clear, obvious, like, this is where we
Ah.
came from.
Okay.
Um, it's interesting to me because everybody is trying to rebuild the same thing, and I don't know the actual term for it. I like to call it the pink wheel syndrome. Like, you're not
Hmm.
reinventing the wheel. You just made the wheel again, but you painted it a different color and tried to pass it off as being this brand new revolutionary thing.
Mm-hmm. That is really good. I'm going to steal that. That's a very good explanation. Pink wheel. Okay. All right. So they pink wheeled it. All right. And
It
links, have
looks,
you seen that?
yeah, I saw that. The ByteDance one, it kind of came, didn't surprise me too much, because, TikTok's such a huge,
Oh,
huge
yeah.
app. They have
Wow.
probably so much technical like experience in there that they were like, it makes sense for us to kind of take something and do it on our own, and I can only imagine the effort they put into it. It looks
Mm-hmm.
cool. I haven't built anything with it. I haven't found the need, but
Okay.
definitely something to keep kind of tabs on and just be like, cool, what is this? How is this evolving? What are they doing different? What are they trying to implement that you couldn't get from, say, your React natives?
Yeah. Okay. And in the spirit of, I've had a hard time finding thought leaders in this and just kind of find out about it through my front end channels. Are there others I'm missing that have been open sourced recently?
Would you consider Flutter open source? It's
I
not
mean,
recent, but
no, it's not
it's out
recent at
there.
all. Absolutely. And that's the thing is when I have looked into like Expo, you really see this, I don't know if you want to call it like tribalism between the Flutter folks and the React Native folks. And they will not meet. Like I feel like Hacker News is populated with the Flutter people and they love Flutter and they will hear no, they won't change. So because of that though, it's hard to find like really compelling comparisons between them. They just seem to be sort of comparable. I mean, if anything, they're kind of like, well, it's a bunch of front-end engineers working on React Native. The real developers are Flutter developers. I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting here, but yeah, that I only excluded them because of there just don't seem to be like the new sort of like vendor-driven approaches.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, you tell me. Why do you include them in this list here? Like, you just feel like it's comparable, and so if we're thinking of different options, Flutter's got to be in there.
I think it's comparable. Yeah, like I would
Yeah.
definitely include it. There's also like a community fork of Flutter, that started probably 2023, I would say,
Okay.
where they were like, we wanted to move faster. Google isn't doing the Flutter project like any service by staying slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had to look it up. It's called Flock.
Flock. Flock. K.
Yeah.
CK.
Basically just like the
Flock of birds.
Flock Flutter. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. I got a bird metaphors just everywhere.
Bird metaphors everywhere.
Okay.
But yeah, they took it. They're like, this stuff is cool, and we don't want to see it go away, and we want to make sure that we're keeping up to date with what people are doing with Flutter. So we want to. We're gonna fork it and control it and kind of bring it back to the community, and it seems pretty cool because it's like a drop-in replacement, and it swaps out some of the underlying libraries, but it just looks cool. I'm pretty excited to see how far it goes, but it has been a few years.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I wonder, do you think that the Flutter community was concerned about like a killed by Google situation that like Google,
I mean, that's the fear of every Google project. I say with like, I'm involved in some of Google's projects, like as a ambassador, but I don't think it's a secret that there is a high turnover rate to some of Google's projects. Flutter, I would say it's doing it's doing for Google what they want it to do, and I don't think there would be a reason why they would just come out and be like, "We're killing it." Google's a huge Java Dart, like they do use that all the time, and it makes sense for them, so it serves their purposes.
All right, Mike, AI. How is AI changing mobile development?
I think so. As an engineer, AI is probably going to make mobile development far easier. In some ways. I built after I left Ionic. One of my first things I want to do was build a mobile app for Android, for iOS, and I did use AI to help like as an assistant and not as like a vibe code.
Okay.
I will say the AI got me pretty far until it broke, and then I actually did have to learn. So it will help you get to that first kind of checkpoint, and then you kind of have to like, okay, now I need to refine how am I asking it, how am I using these tools to further focus everything. As an app builder who would want to integrate AI into their app, it's twofold. I think it makes sense for like a lot of the like fun one that I had today was, I want to integrate an AI imaging model into my app so that way I could take a picture of something and turn it into like an 8-bit, 32-bit, like an old retro gaming kind of icon. And I was like, cool. I don't have to go ahead and do that myself. I can just go reach out to like OpenAI or Anthropic or any of the AI providers and be like, there we go. Here's the image. Do the thing for me.
Yeah. Oh, neat. Oh, yeah, that's really cool. So what does that look like typically? Like APIs, or are there like iframe experiences, or
Mostly API driven. I know
yeah.
for Anthropic, the stuff I had worked with before, it was just install this package. You're making requests against their own API, and you're picking out um, which model and which kind of like tier of tools you want to use, and then you get the response back, and it's kind of like a live streaming of requests that come back from the server depending on how you set it up. So
Hmm.
for like this hypothetical image tool, I would be basically taking a photo, turning that into just random blobs of data, sending it out to my AI provider of choice, and
Hmm.
then hoping a response comes back and it can process it and then displaying it to my users. It'd be a very like REST, similar to like a RESTful experience that devs
Yeah.
have been using for years.
Right. They make it easy. Yeah.
Mm.
I know, and the OpenAI API has been around for several years now, and it always seemed like the default. But I do feel like they have some movement now. I mean, I'm even thinking of like GitHub wanting to make their HQ into like a platform for leveraging agents, right? And so I do feel like
Mhm.
there's this move towards like, where are we going to be, I don't know, prompting our agents and running them and all of these things. And again, with mobile, it's like compute. Is it happen? If you've got say I've got Claude on my phone, well, that is using the edge to reach their servers. But increasingly with these smaller models, maybe it'll be running on my phone at some point, or maybe it is already. I mean, I'm sure somebody's done it. Um, so I feel like maybe there's some movement there. But also, you mentioned data, like you're in the data industry these days. Is there something that like either AI or just like the mobile space in general, how are they thinking about where this information is stored? Is this just like local first, trying to keep things on the device, or, are there preferred like databases for app developers who want their native apps running on their phones?
I mean, kind of biased. I'm pretty
Absolutely.
partial to Prisma.
Sure.
We do have some pretty good stuff, but I think as far as where people are storing all this data and everything, it's kind of anyone's guess.
Yeah.
Apple, for their credit, tries to encourage people to do on device first for
Okay.
privacy and security reasons.
Makes sense.
Um, Android, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
There is on device storage, but you're pretty much encouraged to push it to a Google own kind of data center. So
Yeah.
there's some possibly privacy focused approaches that people should and really have to take into consideration,
Yeah.
especially with AI, as we're seeing so many AI companies not respect user privacy, which is
Yeah.
it's not really cool.
Not cool at
And in
all.
some places, it's illegal, like everywhere except the U.S. It feels like.
Yikes. Uh, Another conversation for another time, I'm afraid. But yes, indeed. Okay. Yeah, I know the data thing, just at the broadest level, just seems to be again that issue of like, the place where developers are running their compute on the hyperscalers, on Firebase, whatever, is going to be the same for mobile as it is for these desktop experiences. The architecting is where things maybe change a little bit. And the
Yeah.
whole reason I ask is because, yeah, like as someone who is interested in the dev tools space, I'm just looking for like, how is mobile moving the needle on dev tools? How is it changing what we should pay attention to? Are there opportunities where maybe there's a gap, like a need for new dev tools? And
I
it just seems to come down not to the database, but to the CI/CD every time.
Every time. It's
Every time.
still the hardest thing to solve, and it's still the biggest like time crunch in any shipping because as I said, like everything can be reused. Um if you're building a full company web infrastructure, a lot of those resources are shared.
Yeah.
CI, CD is the only thing that can't be shared for whatever reason.
Wow. Well, You have confirmed many of my suppositions. You have expanded them in other ways. I've learned a lot. Okay, Mike, I appreciate this. So for folks who want to continue hearing the exciting prognostications that you have on this industry, where do you direct folks? Do you have a social media account? Should they find you on LinkedIn, email, blog? What do you do?
Yeah, I am mostly active on Blue Sky these days. M Hartington basically on there. I do occasionally blog. I think I'm up to the one blog post a year, and I try
Oh,
to make it
nice.
a really good one.
Ooh.
Yeah, just for my own
Yeah.
kind of thought process.
Yeah, you
But yeah,
polish it for a year.
mostly Blue Sky these days, and occasionally
Okay.
LinkedIn.
All right. Well, let's wrap up then. I have really enjoyed speaking with you, Mike. Again, my name is Kate Holterhoff. I'm a senior analyst at RedMonk. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and review the Monkcast on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching us on RedMonk's YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, and engage with us in the comments.